Greetings, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Becoming Chiron, the key to unlocking healing and personal alchemy. With me, your hostess, Ursula Duffy. I have a lot to get into today, and it's all kind of ready to just come flooding and pouring out of me. So I'm just going to get right into it. Today's episode is going to be all about Chiron in the third house of one's natal chart. Last time we did the second house, so we'll just go one by one, house by house. And at first, we'll do our Astro Weather Check, as we always do. And the vibe that we're in right now is really cool and interesting to me. And there's many facets to that. So first thing I want to mention is, of course, today is Friday, January 20th. It's about 9:51 a.m. here on the East Coast in Atlantic City, New Jersey. And overnight, we shifted into Aquarius season. So around 3:30 a.m., the sun shifted from Capricorn into Aquarius. And here in the Northern Hemisphere, that marks pretty much the dead of winter, the coldest time of the year. Although the light has begun to return on the other side of the solstice, both solstices really, I feel like we really get into the grit of the season that we're in. So Aquarius is the energy of revolution and rebellion and freedom and innovation and eccentricity and your weirdness, letting that freak flag fly. It's also very much about community and humanitarian efforts and the greater good and how we individually contribute to that. It's an air sign, so we're moving out of cardinal earth into fixed air. So we're holding the energy now of the season. And you may feel, or maybe beginning to feel, like more forward momentum now with this shift of the sun. Also with the Mars and Mercury retrogrades being over at this point. We've been in this pause for a really long time. We've been holding all of this potential energy with Mars, the planet of action, being retrograde, and then concurrently with Mercury for the end of December until just recently this week on the 18th. So I want to get into that a little bit. The aspect or the energetic flow or the way that the planets are talking to each other is really curious. We have Mars kind of holding steady at 8 degrees of Gemini, and with Mercury's station, that happened at 8 degrees of Capricorn. And what that creates is an aspect or an energetic flow between the planets called an inconjunct. So the other thing that's interesting is, I know we talked about yods, maybe the first or second episode of this podcast. What it's doing right now is creating this yod aspect between the south node of the moon in Scorpio, Mercury at 8 degrees of Capricorn, and the finger of the yod, the finger of God, is pointing to Mars at 8 degrees of Gemini. So it's very curious and interesting setup, and the synchronicity in forming that aspect with the two planets stationing within a week of each other, and then the south node being right there at this time as well. So south node in Scorpio has been all year. This year it shifted at the end of last year into Scorpio and will be here until later this year. And that's pretty much been very much about releasing frozen or stuck or stored emotions, because Scorpio relates very, very much to our deepest emotions. And the shadowy deep, the underworld, the shadow work, all of that. So with the eclipse season this year, with them all being in Taurus and Scorpio, we've really had an opportunity to release, let go, transform, and heal. And now we have this energetic triangle, essentially, with Mercury and Mars there. So this is a really good time, once the retrogrades are over, that shadow period on the other side, what's called the post shadow, is a really good time for reflection and integration of whatever came up during the retrogrades. And it's this is really a potent moment. Never underestimate the power of a stationing planet, especially one that moves relatively slowly like Mars. Mars has been at 8 degrees since the retrograde ended on the 12th, and it's still at 8 degrees of Gemini. Mercury moves a little faster, so the station isn't as long, but it's really, really, really potent. So anything that's come up during this time for Mars since the end of October and for Mercury since the end of December, really good time for integration, really good time for reflection. Really good time to recognize the gifts that have been given, even if it was something that was difficult that you had to work through that came up. In my personal life, that was very much the case, but I wouldn't change it for the world. And it's a good time for release as well, because we're pulling in the South Node energy here too. The other thing that's been adding to the potency of this week is our annual meetup of the sun and the planet Pluto. Pluto is at 28 degrees of Capricorn right now. So as the sun has shifted into Aquarius overnight, it's made its annual pass of Pluto. And whenever we have Pluto and sun together, it relates very much to our inner light and personal power dynamics, and kind of shining the light on maybe those parts of ourselves that are either unseen or that we kind of keep hidden. Anything coming up collectively at this time as well will be something that is maybe like an underworld experience, or like a life, death, rebirth, metamorphosis, something coming out of the muck or the mud to be reborn. If you're born with Sun Pluto, this energy might feel activating to you. It is for me. I'm born with Sun Pluto. But otherwise, if it's not part of your astrological energetic blueprint from the moment that you were born, it's another opportunity to bring things up to the surface. So we were in that energy for the last few days. We will be for the next few days. Especially interesting is the new moon that's coming tomorrow, because the moon and the sun both passed by Pluto right before this new lunar cycle begins. So we're in Aquarius season now. We have the new moon in Aquarius at 1 degree tomorrow afternoon around 3:53 p.m. here on the East Coast. And this new moon is infused with that Pluto energy. The other thing too is we're in a new lunar year based on the Chinese calendar as well. So there's just this time is so ripe energetically. And with the moon moving in, we'll have 4 planets in Aquarius. So that Aquarian energy is really strong right now too, which I love. I might be a little bit biased because my South Node's in Aquarius. However, it's a good time to tap into it, especially if you're unfamiliar with it or it's a part of your chart where you have some lessons to learn. So as of the new moon tomorrow, we'll have Sun, Moon, Venus, and Saturn all in the sign of Aquarius. Very ripe for inner work, very ripe for setting intentions for the lunar cycle for the next month, but also especially particularly for the next 6 months. So if you have anything that you want to do around the ceremony for the new moon tomorrow afternoon, when that new moon happens, is a really good time to do that. And it's air, so new thoughts, new ideas, especially anything that's come up during the Mars retrograde in Gemini, which is also an air sign. Really good time to put all of that either in a journaling or documentation. If you got any downloads during this time, maybe make a plan to bring them into fruition over the next 6 months. It could be really cool to work with, especially if you have Aquarius placements. And I just feel like the energy is really positive for this and for working with it. So we have that. And then the other thing that I wanted to pull in today into today's Astro Weather Check is the symbols for the new moon. So there are multiple sets of symbols for every degree of the zodiac that are channeled imagery. Several people have done this and written these. Probably the most common is the Sabian symbols. I have this book called The Circular Temple, and it's a compilation of, I think, almost all of them. So I want to read some of the symbols and descriptions for Aquarius too, just to give another perspective on the energy that we're in working with, especially with that yod aspect that we have between Mercury and the South Node and Mars. So we round up when we're working with these symbols. The new moon will be around 1 degree and 32, 33 minutes of Aquarius. So we're going to work with the symbol for the 2nd degree. And the Aquarius 2 description in this book, the title of it is The Use of Subtlety and Intuition in Contacting the Spirit Realms and in Perceiving the Finer Aspects of Reality. And then one set of symbols is the Omega symbols. And the Omega symbol for 2 of Aquarius is an alchemist trying to capture a spirit in a forest. And I want to read the description of this one in particular because I think it's really cool. And the description of this one is, you're always looking for help in accomplishing whatever project in which you're currently involved, and seek especially to enlist the support of natural forces. You understand that those forces are at work everywhere, including in each and every one of us. And so you call out to the pure and natural energies of your fellow humans to work with you in the process of evolutionary change. You're always going after something elusive, and the way to find it is to become that energy which will draw it to you. The Pleiadian symbol for 2 of Aquarius, from a blue sky, a torrent of rain suddenly begins to fall. And then the Chandra symbol, a woman strolling in a garden. She is unaware that she is being watched by elves. And there's another one called the Azoth. Waking in the night, a man realizes a solution to a problem. So take those descriptions and symbols and imagery and let them marinate a little bit. Reflect on them. I feel like with everything I already discussed with the Astro Weather Check, it's really cool with those images, especially in this energy that we're in. And they certainly capture and encapsulate Aquarian energy for sure. I do have the Pleiadian symbols as well. Let me see if I can pull them up pretty easily. Because I think, not the Pleiadian, the Sabian symbols. I think it's cool to pull that into, and for some reason those aren't in this book. So the Sabian symbol for 2 of Aquarius is, one moment, an unexpected thunderstorm. So there's another one. Just think about if you've ever heard of or studied the unseen realms or the energy, like the unified field or the energy that exists in our atmosphere, kind of like what Tesla was tapping into when he created and invented all of his incredible gadgets, free energy, all of that. That, I think, is a lot of what is being conveyed in these symbols and imagery. And we all have that available to us. And it is that beautiful Aquarian invention, the spirit of innovation and creating something that's new and different, or tapping into something that we can channel and bring forward to ourselves and to the collective. So really, really cool. Let those kind of sit. I feel like, especially with this energy, bringing in the symbols was an important part of the Astro Weather Check for today. So let's move into Chiron in the 3rd house. I'm pretty much going to follow the same format as I did for the last episode as I move through the houses and as I move through the signs. So my interpretation and what I've learned about the 3rd house of the natal chart or birth chart or the chart is it's the spot that relates to communication. And as we're just coming off of these retrogrades, communication has been particularly important, especially clarity and choosing your words wisely and responding rather than reacting. And remember that communication is a two-way street, and this covers all forms of communication: verbal, nonverbal, body language, written, spoken, But also, one thing that's often forgotten about communication, I find, is that listening is also part of the process. So if we learned anything during these retrogrades, in particular, it's how important it is to listen. And I'm talking about with our ears, but also with our bodies, and tapping into listening as intuition and what you're feeling in your body when something happens or when somebody says something, and paying a special attention to that. I feel like that's one of the most important things, and listening to our intuition and our feelings and getting back to those parts of ourselves that we've been conditioned out of and not to listen to. So that lives in the third house, as well as our local environment. So think about like your neighborhood and your immediate surroundings. It also relates to short distance travel. So like errands, trips to the store, quick trips, whether that's by car or walking or any form of transportation that is fast as far as distance, or short as far as distance. And the third house also can relate to extended family like aunts and uncles. And it also relates to the goddess. I've seen that in some interpretations of the houses. And one thing also to note, I'm not sure if I did it with the first house, but with the third house, we have these energies called planetary joys, kind of like where planets are most comfortable, I guess you could say. And the moon is in its planetary joy in the third house. So those are some themes that I always work with when we're talking about third house. And just if you haven't listened to any episodes, if this is your first one, remember that when we're talking about Chiron, we're talking about our healing journey. We're talking about our sense of mastery in this lifetime and becoming the masters that we came here to be. So with Chiron in the third house, there's going to be themes around a healing journey related to everything that I just mentioned. So what we'll do next is, I'm pretty sure I remembered everything with the third. It'll come up if I didn't. So we have, I'll read the passage from Barbara's book now. Barbara Hand Clow's Chiron, Rainbow Bridge Between the Inner and Outer Planets. So we'll listen to Barbara's perspective on Chiron in the third. And as I said last time, she does in these passages refer to the research that she used to write this book. So I might skim over some of it or interject, but I'll mention it if I do. Because if you want to learn fully about what she's talking about, I recommend just getting the book and reading it, because then you can reference the charts that she's talking about. So Barbara's interpretation of Chiron in the third. Chiron's presence in the third house signifies a crisis of integration here on Earth that involves communication, agility, and personal mastery. There are usually problems with discrimination, and the native undergoes many wasteful experiences until maturation. This behavior is often accompanied by unusual teaching and communication talents, which are usually utilized at a young age. This may be the position of the teacher who does not live as she/he teaches. As always with the third house, this native needs to learn by making mistakes, and the mistakes are often outlandish, as this being simultaneously manifests a lot of chirotic force. Eventually, stubbornness mellows into a great single-mindedness, and more ease with life suddenly appears when mastery of some skill is accomplished. Richard Knoll noticed that this position usually creates some kind of important experience with siblings. I meant to mention that, siblings. Either that a sibling is critical to growth, or there is no sibling, causing a sense of isolation. I have found this to be correct in almost every case I have observed of Chiron in the third house. This client is often the adept who instantly seems to comprehend your reading and or is very blind about their own failures and discrepancies in the most mundane facets of life. Watch out, or they will convince you that they are an adept. Do not let them get away with seeing where they are failing in general, for the sooner they wake up and see they are not integrating well, the better. Under the smooth mercurial surface is usually the small child who got picked on during recess on the playground and who ardently desired a true friend. Become the friend and advisor of these clients and subtly encourage them to realize that they can find their highest selves if they can consciously and honestly identify the ways in which they do not fit here. The connection to the 9th house higher self provides them with the brother or sister they lacked. They will stop their obsession with being alone all the time, and they will be in a position to become great communicators. Obviously, this is often a tough position, for the chirotic force is hard for Gemini to master, but it is the key to the 9th house, the polarity, the way to the masters. Usually with Chiron in the 3rd house, there is sexual confusion, which is greatly exacerbated by the power of the media in the late 20th century. The media encourages us to get addicted to stimulation while we are all alone, and is the ideal vehicle for avoiding integrating well with other people. The media easily becomes the Miss brother or sister, and naturally, some individuals with Chiron in the 3rd house are great media teachers who are healing with the media. And then she goes on to mention some of the chart examples. And then she talks about, as an astrologer, it is important to help 3rd house Chiron clients with lack of discrimination and emotional addictions, because the low astral hooks, such as sexual habits based on need or violence, are the most tenacious blocks to the integration of the higher self. These clients are very stimulated by images, and they can clarify such responses with consciousness. Most of my clients with Chiron in the 3rd house have gone through an inordinate amount of rather dangerous experimentation with drugs and sex. But I've also observed a striking ability to identify images not even visible to others. These individuals ultimately will heal the lost brother or sister they seek by integrating their lives in a striking and meaningful way. This person may turn out to be your most maddening and enlightening client. This is a difficult position in a child's chart for parents to handle. The key to Chiron in the 3rd house is that the 3rd house is the communication and integration vehicle for the whole chart. All effort must be expended to make clients conscious of their behavior, to make them see that the ability to bring the higher self into essence is the key to their happiness, because then the 3rd house is balanced by integration of the 9th house. The higher self, our inner teacher, will be empowered to lead this being to mastery of self-integration. Then it is possible to single-mindedly focus the special gift and effectively communicate the gift to others. Clients will never master their chart without mastering the 3rd house, making room for the higher self to move in. Chiron in the 3rd signals a crisis of the highest order. And then the karmic journey moves into the root system of the tree of life, the consciousness rod of the natal chart, the 4th and 10th houses. That is very interesting for a number of reasons. And I apologize that I forgot to mention 3rd house and siblings. So, as she discussed in the last passage I read in the last episode with the 2nd house, the houses work as pairs. So the 3rd is the more personal space, and the 9th is the growth space and the space where we bring things out into the world. In most cases, if you're looking at your chart, the root of your chart, the IC, which we talked about in Healing the Root episode, will be in the 3rd or 4th house. In some cases, and depending on latitude, it can be in the 5th, but most times it's in the 3rd or the 4th. So it's interesting, her description and how she talks about it, especially as in the lower self and the higher self, because when I always talk about that 9th, I do talk about our connection to our higher self. So the other thing to keep in mind here with the root of the chart is the 3rd, if yours is in the 3rd, like mine is, that's the only placement I have there outside of asteroids, is it really is that dark space of ourselves, and very, very much relates to our subconscious and those hidden parts of our consciousness that we're called to bring forward in our work and in this lifetime. And part of the way to do that is, like she talks about, integration, but also communication. And think about everything I said as far as what communication is and everything that that word represents. And I really think it's cool how she talked about the media and television and that kind of thing, because there's so much subtleness there. And I'm spacing on the word for it right now, but like the imagery that's there that we don't even really see, but our brains do, that we get bombarded with when the television's on. Just think about it, television. So curious and very, very interesting. Yeah, the word's escaping me. If it comes, I'll say it. If not, then you know what I mean. So that's Barbara's perspective. Very, very cool. And she again referenced it, what I called a natural chart in the last episode. So if you have a natural chart, Aries rising, Gemini is your 3rd house. So there's that influence there as well that just comes with the energy of having a natural chart. So let's now move into the Black Moon Astrology Oracle deck. And I will read the 3rd house description and information that's included in this, and then we'll close out today's episode. So the 3rd house card in this deck is number 27, and it says 3rd house messages. And the imagery on the card is really cool. It's a subliminal messages is what I meant to say before about the TV. There we go. Subliminal messages. Very, very interesting. Because it just popped because this card actually has a ton of hieroglyphics on it and the Eye of Horus. So very, very cool and interesting to include that kind of imagery and message in like pictographs on this card. So what is written in this book for this card: you must stay drunk on writing so reality cannot destroy you. And that's a quote from Ray Bradbury in Zen in the Art of Writing. And the book says, words have power. Now is the time to get your point across. With this card, you may also get a clearer direction in the way to proceed. The 3rd house also represents neighborhoods and siblings. The 3rd house is an area of the astrological chart that reveals how we think, speak, and communicate. It signifies our need to know and demonstrates how we put our concepts and thoughts into words. You are in search of answers and in need of unlocking mysteries, but your mind is agile and you are able to grasp every detail right now. You may wish to express this mental suppleness through writing, speaking, and researching subject matter, which has always intrigued you. Libraries call to you. You may suddenly wake up with an idea that could turn out to be very lucrative. You may even be toying with the idea of writing a book, starting a blog, perhaps a screenplay, or a position at a local news media outlet. There couldn't be a better time than now. As well as dreamy or imaginative writing and poetry. The 3rd house also represents dexterity, swiftness, curiosity, and figuring out the mechanisms of what makes things work. So this could mean expressing yourself about something rather technical. The 3rd house, more than any other, is the house of the mind. Mercury is about giving and receiving information. When this card turns up in a reading, there is a need to uncover all that you can and relate the information to others. Also an area of commerce and sales. When the third house card presents itself in a reading, it can indicate a time of buying and selling and becoming involved in retail or transactions made over the internet. Issues dealing with siblings may come up. There may be questions you must resolve to do with brothers or sisters. Your neighborhood may even be going through some changes. The third house also signifies your neighborhood, so expect events that will make a difference there. For more in-depth information, look at the surrounding cards. If the moon card is also in the spread, it might indicate secretive actions carried out at night. Perhaps meetings or even vandalism or burglaries are possibilities. If the Mars card is present, look for noise and radical changes you may not be so happy with. With the Saturn card present, it could mean that an area may start to appear old or decrepit. Also, with the Saturn card, be careful how you put your thoughts and feelings into words. Other persons may not be as warm and receptive to your words and ideas as you hope them to be. This card can also mean you'll be talking your way into and out of tough situations. However, you will be mentally able to grapple with issues and sort them out well. Important documents and other paperwork are indicated. This isn't your everyday type of paper shuffling. The matter will be more significant than the usual. This card also indicates a fortunate time to start a business of your own, perhaps working in translation, creating software, or something to do with deciphering codes and messages, for example. You may also become involved in studying other languages or anything related to and working toward a common good. Meditation and relaxation are suggested when this card presents itself. If the Neptune or Pisces card falls in the spread along with the third house card, your thoughts are likely inspired ones, and you could be having psychic or mediumistic communications. Third house card in brief: finding the right words, discussion, being of two minds, vacillation, hesitation about stepping into situations, coming to clearer choices, objectivity, short trips, air travel, or taking flight, mastering something new, neighborhood events or changes, connecting to the greater mind, owning what you know to be true, being chatty or talkative, closing down emotionally and relying on common sense, turning cold on someone, or someone turning cold on you, hand-to-eye coordination, games, and figuring out puzzles, intelligence, inventions, numbers and letters, needing to do math, early schooling, scripts, codes, siblings, bargains, signing of contracts, sales, and commercial transactions. Corresponding tarot card is the Three of Pentacles, key ideas, short journeys, the neighborhood, siblings, signing documents, communication, and rumors. So one thing that I did remember that I'm not sure was conveyed is the third house also relates to short study. So like taking a one-off class that doesn't last very long, or like one of the things said, I think in the third house card description, short or early schooling. It relates to that as well, because the ninth house, the opposite side, is where we take long study, like, you know, your college degree or something like that. So just education brevity, I guess you could say, relates to the third house too. Now, I know that in both of these, from Barbara's book and the Black Moon Oracle deck, they did kind of throw in some other energy that could be there. So if you have, say, Saturn in the third, or your third house is Gemini, it could be cool if any of that resonated for you. If you have Chiron in the third house in particular, which is obviously what we've been talking about, I hope that any and all of that resonates for you. And that, especially from the passage from Barbara's book, gives you a lot more insight into the healing journey that's there for you. My third house is Cancer, and the only thing I have there is my IC, the root of my chart. Like I said before, I'm not going to get too involved in asteroids and other things like that, but I do have some other placements there. But primarily with the main planets that we work with, it's an empty house for me, with the exception of the root, which is pretty important. But nothing there natally. When things go through it, I definitely notice some things that come up, especially with Mars and siblings. That's like clockwork, unfortunately, and fortunately, I guess, on both, flip sides of the coin. So yeah, that is a wrap for today. That was a lot of information and content. And one cool thing, if Aquarius is your third house, you have that new moon coming tomorrow. With everything I talked about and everything that I read, that is potent, ripe energy. So if that's your third house, I do hope that you pull all of this in and set some really powerful intentions for the next 1 to 6 months around those themes and what's coming up for you and what the third house means for you personally. Just a couple of things that we have coming up on Monday. My partner Mandy and Crystal from Sea Goddess are doing a Spirit Speaks workshop. They've been doing a Monday night show at 7 p.m. East Coast time pretty much every Monday for a really long time, called Spirit Speaks. And they're finally rolling that into teaching about how Spirit speaks and how Spirit communicates. So funny talking about the third house today. We have that coming up, Spirit communication, on Monday. That link to register is on our website, and also the link to their show on our YouTube channel. There's a lot of episodes that you can watch and get a feel for the both of them and what they talk about. Crystal is an incredible medium, and just, I love the way she talks. She's so honest, yet the caring behind her words. There's nobody like her. So that's on our homepage, seagoddesshealingarts.com. Also on our classes page, but there's links on the homepage to go in there to watch the show. And then if you want to join the workshop on Monday night at 7, that link is on there as well. Their schedule for Spirit Speaks is shifting, so they're taking advantage of the routine time to actually teach this time a workshop instead of broadcasting the show. And that's a live show, which is really cool. There's readings involved, live readings and that kind of thing too. So they talk about whatever comes up, but then there's also people that ask for cards and information. So that's part of the show as well. Really, really cool. Hope that you can take advantage of that. And that's on, like I said, Monday night at 7 Eastern time. And you can register on our website. And then I'll put a link in the show notes for that as well. And then next week on Friday, I believe I still have a couple spots left. I'm doing an astrology readings pop-up here in Southern New Jersey in Summers Point at Island Therapy. And that is from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. And there are half-hour time slots. So it's a 20-minute reading. So if you want to get your feet wet, if you've never had your chart read before, something like that could be a really cool introduction. Or if you know your chart, I can touch on transits or whatever's coming up at the time for you. So that is in person at Island Therapy on Friday, the 27th, next week, from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. And the information for registration for that is also on our website in the little upcoming events and workshops tabbed box on our homepage. You have to register through Island Therapy, but there's instructions in there for that. And the last thing that I have to announce is on next Saturday, the 28th, we're holding a ceremony on the beach here in Atlantic City for the whales and the marine life and everything that's been happening with the strandings and the deaths that our communities are being so affected by. So we will gather on the beach here in Atlantic City on Vermont Avenue, which is also known as Crystal's Beach, on Saturday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time till 4. And we'll hold a ceremony to send healing energy out into the ocean and to the marine life to support them. Whales in particular are such incredible mammals and beings, and just it's been heartbreaking to see what's been going on all up and down the East Coast. I believe it's going from Florida up into New York and maybe even more north at this point. So we'll be doing that. You can join us in person. We'll also have a live stream. The information for that is also on our website, on our events page, and also on our homepage. And we'll be posting on social media and all of that. I believe the live stream will be on our YouTube and Facebook pages too. So if you can't be in person, you can join virtually, and that's a free community event that we're hosting. So that is all for now. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for making it this far. This is a little bit longer than last episode. I've got my spark back. So I am excited to get into the next topic. Will be the Chiron in the fourth house and all about the fourth house. And if you're just tuning in, this podcast is new to you, I highly recommend going back to the beginning and listening to all the episodes in order, because they each kind of build on each other. But if you're new here, welcome, and thank you for being here. And thank you all for being here who've been with me the whole time or even intermittently. And just a reminder, you can now be a paid subscriber for Becoming Chiron. That link is in the show notes, which I'll post. And it's pretty much in every episode for the last 3 to 4 is when I started adding the paid subscriber. So if you want to support me that way, I'd be very grateful. If not, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love feedback. Comment on my Instagram posts or on YouTube. You can listen and watch on YouTube now, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music /Audible, and Spotify, and on our websites. So you got healingarts.com and ursaalchemy.com. So if you want to email ursaalchemy@gmail.com. If you have Chiron in the third or anything to say about anything I've already talked about in every episode so far, I'd love to hear from you. I love feedback. I love connecting with people that are listening. So that is all for today. And as always, as we close out, remember to be a maverick. Bye.